Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Equalizer, Season 3, Episode 8. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of Episode 7, where Mel found out something happened to her brother. It turns out, one of her brothers, Edison, turns out he was meeting with their sister Ruby, and he ended up getting kidnapped, well, carjacked, but then straight up kidnapped. And it's up to Mel. Mel tried to track down the one lead she had, but that one lead ended up dying and got hit by a car. So she went back, filled Harry in on everything, which Harry's like, all right, we got to call Robin. But, Mel feels awkward because it's like, right, me and Robin we aren't in a good place. Like, this would happen at the worst possible time that me and Robin in sync, because she's mad about the Delilah thing, understandably. And so she didn't want to I don't know if Rob's going to help. It's like, Rob's like, no, that's not important. And even Harry's saying, like, that's not important. Regardless of what's going on between you two right now, this is family, that takes precedence. So always, when it comes to them, it always takes precedence. So, but this episode also gave us a really interesting insight into Mel's family life, because maybe it was brought up in other seasons, but I don't remember, but it could have been that she has siblings. The fact of the matter is, she has two brothers. She has Edison, she has Matthew, who's apparently serving overseas, I believe, and then Ruby, who's kind of like I don't know if she's like the older sibling or not. They seem like, it seems like they're probably all roughly around the same age. It doesn't seem like there's that many years apart between all of them. But anyway, it seems like Ruby's probably like the quote unquote more responsible one. At least she likes to, kind of put on the airs, because she did kind of talk to Mel with some spice when it's like, yeah, this is you got the police involved and everything, yeah, but it's like, oh, Mel's like, yeah, this is my friend Rob, she's someone I served in the military with, like, she's got a certain set of skills, so this is kind of in her lane, she can help us with this. And then it's like, Mel's like, yeah, I'll fill you in on any details, I'll keep you in the loop, but I'd rather hear from your friend than you, Mel. I was like, yo, why you throwing all that spice? Harry talks about it being like, that's kind of a thing. It's like, oh, what's up with that? It's like, there's always been a thing where it's just like, right. She probably sees their brother Matthew as like the next responsible sibling, because he's like, oh, he's got a job in the military. It's like, but since leaving the military, she probably looks at it as like, oh, you haven't really you haven't really settled down in life. The fact is that you just, what do you do in your life? Like, you run a bar. Like, she doesn't really know what her sister does. So but her and Edison, because Mel says like her and Ed have always had the better relationship. But I guess it's kind of like, we're kind of like we haven't really apparently figured things out type of, at least in like Ruby's eyes. And she's the one that takes care of their parents. So it makes her feel like, yo, I'm the only like really responsible. Matthew's got a reason for not being here, but you two, like, what's up with you? Like, figure your stuff out, essentially. And I love that, I love Harry. Of course he's going to take Mel's side, of course, but it's just like, I don't like the way she talks to him. And he even said, she's like a sister-in-law to me. It's like, she's not like a sister-in-law to you, she is, but it's like, I get the point. But the fact is that it's like, yeah, like, and the fact is that she always talks to you so condescendingly. She always acts like she's better than you. It's like, oh, and she thinks she's better than you, so obviously she's delusional. I love that line. I was like, that's super cute. I know I think Mel would really appreciate you being like, yeah, if she thinks in any shape or form she's better than you, she's completely delusional, Mel, because you're like the best. It's like, it's really sweet. Of course you'd say that about your wife. Kind of actually brings up some deeper questions where it's like, okay, so, well, because Harry and Mel got married after Harry died, right? So, because I'm like, yeah, there's no question. Well, no, because that was that whole point. Wasn't that last season? The whole thing about like her best friend coming up about the whole thing of like, oh, like I think she lost her husband and she was trying to be there for Mel, supporting her, but it's like, oh, Harry's actually alive, you lied to me. There was that whole spice and everything. I want to say that was last season, if I remember correctly. I don't think that was this season. That might have been last season, I believe. But either way, because that ended up coming up, maybe that was early in the season. I'm just blurring everything together. Either way, but the fact is her family didn't have that reaction made me go like, oh, So they must have been kept in a loop about like the Harry stuff. Like maybe it's like, right, they don't really know what we do, so I'm able to kind of like skirt around it. I don't know. They completely didn't answer that, so I'm like, maybe that wasn't as big of an issue there on that front. Or I don't know. I'm curious to know about that. Like they didn't really answer that, but that's running in the back of my mind. I was like, how was that handled in your family and stuff like that? Either way, getting into the meats and potatoes of it all, they start taking a deep dive into figuring out, like, okay, why was Edison taken? Because it turns out this wasn't just some random carjacking. They took him on purpose. They were taking pictures of him. The person that was responsible for it was following him. They were waiting for the opportunity to grab Edison. And like he works at this like some kind of business. I don't, what was it, like Enix or something like that? And it's like, what did they actually do? I don't remember now. It's like some data, money, and transfers and stuff like that. And Rob goes there, and Harry does some deep diving, and it turns out, yeah, like one of the investors, like there's some $20 million missing. Turns out this business is also or at least like one of these investors or whatever is a front for the Colombian mob. So now Harry's like, yo, maybe your brother kind of stole the money. But Mel's like, there's no way my brother did it. Are you accusing my brother of laundering money? It's like stealing money. It's like, I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just talking what the data's kind of like suggesting. So, but it turns out Edison did get away. He just went back to his apartment, tore it apart. I was like, why would you tear apart your own apartment? So he didn't know where the Rolex was. He was trying to find it, tried to, probably watched enough stuff to know, like, right, I need to avoid using my credit card and stuff like that. So he just pawned off the Rolex, ended up using that money trying to get a bus ticket out. But luckily, Mel was able to catch up with him. And it's like, right, I will get into what we really do later, but for now, I got to help you. Sadly, he contacted Ruby. They were probably keeping an eye on the rest of the family. So they probably, like, Mel was probably moving around enough for them not to know. And Mel's pretty good at being able to pick up if she's being tailed. So they wouldn't have been able to kind of follow her, but they knew Ruby had to connect. They knew Ruby was involved. So all they had to do was keep an eye on the other. It's like, right, he would have called one of his siblings. So they've just followed Ruby to Mel's apartment, and that's where like both Mel kind of showcased to her sister, like, whoa, like this is what you like. How do you know how to use a gun? How do you know how to fight like that? It's like, well, you know, she was in the military, but I guess it's like you don't realize that she's a skilled person. That she like the fact it's like, oh, you have a gun. Like I said, it's like I guess she doesn't know like. I guess it goes like in her mind, it's like it goes beyond just military training, but it's like once again, it's like you know. But that might also be the thing of like, she might not know what branch of the military her sister was in. Like Ruby could have just thought like, oh, maybe you were more on the like system analyst or like, you know, you're on the more tech support type of side of things and not like, you know, combat and just, I mean, like, you know, being like a, you know, sniper and stuff like that, like you saw a lot of action. So maybe her sister didn't like really know that. So, because obviously there's different branches in the military that some seem, you know, more, obviously a lot more out there in the field stuff than others branches are. So I guess maybe that's what that ended up being. Because I'm sure like Mel was part of like special ops type of stuff too, just because being the sniper that she is. So when they were setting it up to be like, oh, like someone set up Ed, I was thinking like, oh, it's going to be that coworker. What's her name? Tracy. I was like, is it going to end up being her? Because even she was like, oh yeah, we're kind of rivals and stuff like that. So I figured it was going to, especially when Ed was trying to transfer the money. He was like, yo, the password's been changed. But I don't know if that was just Harry slowing them down, because later on it's like, oh, something's going wrong. They showcased it, that was Harry slowing them down, but I don't know if the first day of like, oh, the password's been changed, that might have had to deal with the real person behind everything. So I thought it was like that rival of his for the job and stuff. Lo and behold, we find out the person behind all of this is his boss. He's like, oh yeah, of course it's going to be the person that's like, yeah, I was more of a mentor, but I thought myself more as a mentor than a boss. I'm like, oh, those people you look up as mentors end up being the ones that kind of screw you over the most. So, but it turns out, yeah, Anthony's the one who jacked the money. He kind of pinned it all. Or it's like, yeah, you were going to leave someone that you were like, oh yeah, look at him more as a friend, blah, 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 blah. And you were about to screw him over by sending the Colombian mob after him. It's like, you know, which I appreciate Harry being there in the car waiting for him. Like, hey, Anthony, let's not get caught up in the details, but basically, I looked at data, found out it was you. You know, and it's like, you messed with family, and when you mess with family, you mess with me. Which was also I was like, oh, that's really sweet of you, Harry. And it's also neat when you kind of get to have your moments like that, kind of get to be like the cool guy in that moment. Like, yeah, I found out it was you, Anthony, looking through the data, so. But yeah, I kind of skipped over it a little bit, but everyone got taken down. The only one that didn't die was Voss, and it's like, I'm sure it helps to have someone who's connected to the Colombian mob like that, because he's a hired gun. I'm sure it's like, I don't know if that's going to come up again later on. Probably not. Not unless it comes up in another story thread, but I'm sure we're kind of done with the Colombian mob for now, but I don't know if that storyline is going to circle back around. Not involving like Mel and her family, but maybe there's some connective tissue there that leads to something else later. Not on Mel's family front, but just with like the Colombian mob. Maybe that could be something, but probably not. Probably like a one and done thing. But yeah, like Mel was beating the ever living shit out of Eric. I'm understandable. It's like, right, not only did you kidnap my brother, you could have killed him, you actually hurt him, trying to threaten him. It's like, oh, I'm beating it for it's almost like every like scratch with my brother, I'm dealing it to you. And Robin had to stop her. It's like, Mel, stop. He's not worth it. It's like, which I also think is kind of funny. I'm like, you say that after you've literally killed everyone else in the building, like all his other men. So it's like, well, no, because they just knocked one dude out. The only ones, there's the two that like Rob hit with the silencer down. I'm like, I mean, I guess that's one thing. Like, they're armed, and the other guy you can at least take care of. So I'm like, all right, you're not there like to get all bloodthirsty. I mean, obviously Mel had every reason to be, but still. But luckily, situation's resolved, and I think the benefit, it's the silver lining to it though, is this situation did cause Mel and her siblings to get closer, you know? I mean, I'm sure when their other sibling comes back, it's like, oh no, we'll figure that out too. But it's like, hey, we all kind of kept secret from each other. The moment like the money situation happened at work, he wanted to quickly like not tell anyone, because it's like, hey, I got to figure it out, like, so I can prove I wasn't responsible. But so he didn't bother going to Mel for help. To be fair, he didn't know what Mel was really into. Like, if he did, he would have known he could go to her. And so Mel's like, yeah, I haven't really been honest about that. And Ruby's also hasn't been honest about like life is kind of tough, balancing raising the kids and taking care of their mom and dad. But it's like, oh, then we've always offered to help, but you refused. It's like, yeah, it's just like, which I kind of get that. It's kind of a pride thing, but also it's just kind of like you feel like you're like, it has to be all on you. And even she's like, right, she has a hard time asking for help. I get it. I do too. So there's some parallels on that I can kind of understand. And so, but like I said, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, it brought them together. No more secrets, except for none of us were telling mom and dad about any of this. Cool. But yeah, we'll all take responsibility. We'll all help out. Like, that's our parents too. So things kind of worked out in the end, and they ended up growing closer. So I even love it's like, oh, Harry, and Harry shows up. Hey, it's taking care of some last minute stuff. It's like, hey, wow. It's like, Mel, you got a good husband. She's super smart. Great, can also rock a sweater. It's like, Mel, have I told you how much I love your sister? It's like, I love that. It's like, especially like all the hate and shade you were throwing earlier to her, and then that's the point, but still. So yeah, things got resolved on that front. There's still the Mel and Rob stuff. It hasn't completely gotten resolved, but I think Robin realizes that it's a part of a larger thing. It's just because she's actually talking it out with Dante multiple times throughout the episode too. Like when it comes to Mel trying to bring it up, it's like, hey, let's focus on saving your brother for now. But it's like, right, why this stings so much is because it's like, Robin had given Dante the advice of, hey, kind of let the past kind of stay in the past, to kind of bury the past. But in the regards of kind of don't let that determine how you move and how you respond to things in present day. But for Robin's like, this is different. I was talking about your father. And it's like, yes, the thing is, friends are the family you choose. So that's what it makes it sting. It's like, Mel isn't blood. She's family you chose that has become like not only one of your best friends, but she's also like a sister to you. So the betrayal cuts deeper, but then it's also because for so many years, she's kept her work life and her private life separate, and now because of season 1 and season 2, like they've bled together, and even the beginning of this season, but it's like, yeah, it bled together so much now that her family was in trouble because of it. So, and now it's just, Delilah training is just a representation, it's a symptom of that larger issue. And it's like, and Dante's like, right, now that those lives have bled together, you don't like it. And he's like, Robin's like, I just don't know how I feel about it in general, you know? Because it's like, yes, because what Vi said, it made sense to her last episode of understanding why. Because once again, I still don't think Vi's told Delilah nor Robin that she went to a gun range, that she's been, like, you know, but I guess it's like, right, I'm an adult, I can do whatever I want to. Delilah's under our roof, so she kind of has to talk to both of us. Plus, she had no business going behind your back to do that. But, you know, so Robin ultimately does sit down with Delilah, and it's like, I'm disappointed, you know, but at the same time, like, I get it. I get why you did it, but it is about learning when to use it and when not to use it. There are times where you're going to need to defend yourself, but it's like that moment wasn't like a moment of like, it's a situation where calmer heads needs to like prevail. And there are times where it's like, you got to use your words and your mind first and foremost. Because it's like, yeah, because if you had done that, that could have turned into a lawsuit situation. Like you could have really hurt that kid. He had to go to hospital. His mother could end up suing. Like that's the nasty rub of it all. So it could have gotten really, really bad, like, because it wasn't even like a situation where you needed to do that, but like you kind of let it kick in, your training, and maybe on some level you kind of felt like, right, I have this power now, I want to use it. Because I think there's been a lot of times recently over the course of the show where Delilah's kind of felt like powerless, and for the first time I think she felt powerful enough to defend someone that was in trouble, and wanting to use it to defend people is the best reason to, like, you know, use any skills, any power that you have, you know? But, I was actually surprised because I knew the end result would be where we are. I just wasn't sure how long it would be before we got there. But also, we don't fully know if the Robin Mel thing's completely okay. But at least Robin's like signing off on Mel training. I was like, oh, I thought you would have. My thought was like, okay, and she's going to like oversee the training or something like that. But it's like, no, as the parent, it's going to be a thing of I can't never like. Mel's going to like have the gloves off. I will never be able to. So I think that's why it's like objectively Mel should be the one that does her training. But also Mel taught me, and I know there's no better teacher. So if Mel's doing this, I know you're in good hands. So her and Delilah are in a better place. Like I said, Robin's still figuring it out. It's not like it's all completely resolved. So I think that was kind of a really, really interesting development on that front. And another side of the episode involves Trish and Delilah going with Vi to an art show. Her art's on display, like, Vi's trying to, like, I get it, you also don't want to, it's that thing of, like, no matter what you do, you never feel like it's good enough. I think, unless, I think everyone's got that imposter syndrome to some extent. I mean, unless you're, like, super narcissistic and you're like, there are people who work hard for where they are and they still feel that. But like, yeah, and I get that as someone who has zero self-confidence. Every time I do something, I'm like, oh, this is garbage. This is trash. Like, I don't believe in myself. So I really resonated with that side of Vi's story this episode when her art's on display. Now it's like, right, the thing you're making is out there for people to judge, to say whatever they want to. So you can, like, when your art's just something, it's been for you for so long, now putting on a display. And Trish is like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry I may put you in this position. It's just, you're an amazing artist, and I wanted people to see what I see. And Vi, is kind of, dealing with it by, as she says, like, Pinot is kind of her way of, like, Pinot Noir is kind of like her way of kind of dealing with like the stress and worry of it all. But she meets a fellow artist who does some beautiful work too, but she's kind of not as confident. And obviously she's putting everything into being this artist. It's just like, right, my mom is saying my parents are like, oh, I should actually get a regular job instead of like kind of aiming for this pipe dream. And so later on, she kind of destroys her art. Like, she's kind of messing up the frame of her art because she's, like, upset because she's kind of putting everything into this. And it's like, right, I put everything in it, and I ended up coming up short. Because Vi didn't end up winning the art contest either, but people did notice how not only her artistic skill, but even, like, how Vi handled this young artist and was able to kind of, it's like, I understand, it's like, at the end of the day, people liking your art is a bonus. It's not the end all be all. It's how you feel about it. How it makes you feel is what comes. Like, we paint first and foremost as artists for ourselves, and if people like it, cool. That's awesome. They don't, that's fine too. Like, it's not about them, it's about us. And so being able to kind of reach out to this young artist like that, I think it's also like a thing of Vi probably, wanting to be there for other people. Like, she probably had people there for her, but sometimes maybe there weren't people there to kind of talk to her in that way, to let her know, like, I get it, the imposter syndrome, I understand it all, so I'm here to help in that regard. So, and it ultimately ended up leading to her, now she's getting a job offer where she's going to be like teaching students and stuff, and she's reluctant at first because it means making a lot of changes at home, but it's like, right, we'll adjust to all of that to kind of help with that. So I'm assuming going forward we're going to see a little bit more of like Vi in the more artistic world. I mean, who knows? I could definitely see that story element leading to like cases later on too, like Vi ends up kind of pointing Robin towards someone that she's met that's like in her class that's in trouble or something. Vi helping, but also getting Rob's help because it might escalate beyond something that Vi can help with. So I could definitely see those developments. So I'm really interested to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.